Hey guys, I want to talk about the Dr. Seuss thing because I think there have been a few good points made about it. And a big one is, can we have a discussion about the specifics rather than sort of making it immediately a culture war thing? Now, ultimately, don't get me wrong, I do think that this does have something to do with the culture war. I do think it's still always a good idea to really look at specifics and make specific arguments regarding the claims of problematic stuff. I started out okay there. Anyway, so I want to talk about this racist depictions in older media, really. But before we get into that, I want to actually promote this. This is Coffee Table Comics. This is Jason Brubaker's website. I'm going to post the link in the description below. It's ctc.stoneenvy.com. I'll post it in the description. Jason Brubaker is going through a particularly tough time right now. He's a friend of mine. I think he's a really good guy and makes some fantastic comics. Seriously, he's one of the godfathers of current crowdfunding comics. And if you don't mind checking out his web store here, you can support him through a tough time and buy a book or buy some original art. That would be even better. He's got some really cool original art here, and it just screams Jason Brubaker. It's so specific to his style, and I love it. All right, so I've been thinking a little bit about the Dr. Seuss thing. Essentially, just in a nutshell, they're not going to be publishing 6 Dr. Seuss books anymore. And that could mean a lot of things. But they were over racist depictions in those 6 books, or supposed racist depictions. Now, to get to how complicated this really is, I think this post by my publisher, Peter Samedi, is really interesting. He says, as a comic book reader, this is one of my favorite books as a kid because they basically all had superpowers. I guess this one should be banned too, huh? And it's the 5 Chinese brothers. I've actually never read this. I don't know. Judging off of the cover, I'd say it looks like it's a relatively old book. But because of this, he actually got a lot of flack from a lot of people saying that he was racist, even though he's half Chinese himself. So how strange does this get? So the interesting thing as I thought about this is, can depictions be racist? Can people be racist, or ideas racist? Like, what exactly is racist? The weird part is that the idea of racism has changed, especially in academia recently, and I tell you, it is going to push this direction for the rest of the world. And that is that racism doesn't mean any longer that you think that your race is superior to another's. It's going to end up being that racism is any time that you're not actively being anti-racist. Sounds a little crazy because that means that everything's racist unless you're being actively anti-racist. But at the same time, people are going to say that specific cartoons and depictions are racist based off of, I guess, styling or, maybe how, I don't know, just tropes, I guess, is what it comes down to. So it does get very difficult. So let me point this out. This was Biden omits Dr. Seuss from Read Across America amid new concerns of racism. It's interesting because of the timing. This is why I say that I think it has actually a lot to do with culture war because of all the timing. Dr. Seuss's birthday is the Read Across America Day. It's his birthday. This wasn't done on accident. It wasn't a coincidence. It was done because Dr. Seuss is probably the most famous children's book author in the world, and especially in America. People love Dr. Seuss. He's been around. I mean, I don't even know how long it's been since his last book was published. How long ago did he pass away? And yet everyone still is in love with Dr. Seuss. He's just permanently a part of the culture. He has shaped so much of what American culture is. And so it only makes sense that people would think about Dr. Seuss. And by the way, he was an anti-Nazi. So if you are using the argument that anything racist is anything that is not actively being anti-racist, technically Dr. Seuss was very anti-racist. He was very anti-fascist too, in his books and in word. And so this is why it gets so complicated and confusing. So I'm going to play you this little clip.
In a break from the past, President Biden notably left out mention of children's author Dr. Seuss in his remarks on Read Across America Day, the program launched by the National Education Association in 1998 to promote children's literacy, has long been associated with Theodore Seuss Geisel's birthday, both of which are celebrated on March 2nd. In recent years, the NEA has distanced itself from Dr. Seuss. The shift has sparked false rumors of banned books in some school districts, but
All right, so they're conflating, I guess, to a few different things. So one is it's his birthday. Second is that the publisher has decided to stop publishing 6 books, and they cited concerns over racist depictions. Those are 2 separate things, but would those 6 books be the reason why Joe Biden distanced himself from Dr. Seuss? The timing to me actually does scream virtue signal. This is why nobody trusts you, and this is why people jump to the conclusion of cancel culture. But I'm not going to do that. First, I want to hear what possibly the other side has to say about this. This is from Double Toasted, 200,000 subscribers, never seen this podcast before, but I'm interested to see what they have to say on the topic.
In there, if that was something that showed Africans, but you didn't have that on the list. So, but yeah, I can look at that and go, that's problematic. Yeah. As the kids say these days.
Right, yeah. I agree. It makes me mad because I liked If I Ran a Zoo. I'm pretty sure that's it. That's the one because he's bringing in all the animals. I'm pretty sure that's the one. I don't know.
So here's the tough thing about it too, and this is why it gets even more complicated. So the question is, when you're looking at something that was created in an entirely different time and in an entirely different era, and these depictions at the time weren't really considered racist. They were depictions, they were caricatures. I'm not saying that they're flattering or that they're, the best things in the world. I'm not even going to go there. And I would agree that like today, I wouldn't want cartoons drawn like that, like in my books, in my comics. At the same time, is it possible for us to look at existing media as it was and just appreciate it for what it was? You heard the man here in this say that he agrees that these are bad and they have to go, but he's lamenting over it because he liked the book. He liked the book. And so it saddened him to see that this would change. So the question is it more offensive that these existed in the past and that they still exist today and that you have access to see and read these and understand them as an artifact of history? Or is it more offensive that these books are not being published and therefore you will not have access to them? Now I hear people saying there won't actually be book burning, don't freak out. But the reality is, if the books aren't being published anymore, that is essentially the equivalent of books being burned. You're not going to have access to read these at all. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I've been desperately looking for these particularly 6 books. We have several Dr. Seuss books around here that we read quite often. But the idea that culture has changed so much that you're going to erase from history the availability of such books is kind of frightening. Now, I also watched the Ben Shapiro show. I'm trying to get all sides of this. And he mentioned Ray Bradbury's book, Fahrenheit 451. And I loved this book. It's just my little copy. I read it. And at the time that I read it, I didn't really make that many comparisons to today. I was pretty interested in dystopia from a fictional standpoint. And so I found this book to be really interesting. But now what I see is that there is a little bit of prophecy related to it. Firefighters that are burning books rather than putting out fires, they're starting fires. And it's all about hiding information. And it does worry me that in the digital world, that's all it takes is just for books not to exist. You don't actually have to start a fire for someone to make the book burning argument. All you have to do is quit making them available, books that have been so old. And so again, it brings up the same points in Disney cartoons and elsewhere. Right now, I'm actually looking at, I'm so sorry, they're so small and hard to see, but these are images from Dr. Seuss that he drew during World War II. They're propaganda, and you can see that there are heavily caricaturized, wow, that was hard to say, images. They're very cartoony images of a Japanese man and Hitler. Okay, I don't know if that's supposed to be the leader of Japan at the time, but they both look kind of over the top. And I recognize the Japanese one as being what we would call today racist. But again, is the image racist? Are the intents behind it racist? And if so, why is the depiction of Hitler not considered racist? Though it's his skin color, and I think undoubtedly both countries were involved in some pretty heinous war crimes and evil things. Is propaganda like this okay? And then it makes you wonder, it begs the question, are you going to see in 30 years from now and 40 years from now, 50 years from now, images of today with maybe political leaders that you don't like currently, and cartoons and over the top depictions that get repeated over and over? Are those going to be seen as problematic in the future? And if so, why would you be using them today? You get the idea. It would be impossible to really know. This one's from Disney, and it's actually a rat looking thing with a Japanese hat. This is the one, the cringiest, I would say. It just looks so cringy that it's even done like that. This was put out by Disney. Okay, there have been several propaganda pamphlets like this, and so it makes you wonder. Again, is the image racist? Is the intent behind it racist? And what ought we to do with racist depictions if we deem that they are racist? Well, I would suggest that I don't think eliminating them from existence is the right thing to do. I don't think stopping them from being published is the right thing to do. I think most people's reactions when they see those depictions is just like, from this podcast where people, everyone was kind of like, yeah, that's not pretty good. The thing is, most people look at it and they themselves are not offended. I have yet to meet a single person that is offended on their own behalf. It's so many people that are offended on the behalf of somebody else. Like, this could potentially hurt somebody's feelings out there. But I've yet to see that somebody come forward and claim and take ownership over the fact that they're offended. Because at that point, you'd have to be pretty emotionally shallow not to realize that this was done at an entirely different time and different era. And it begged the question, why even read it then? So you're offended that it exists at all. So ultimately, I think the worry here is I'm going to go full circle here. It's not so much about what books we should and should not be reading. It's people worried about kids in the next generation and what they ought to be reading. But ultimately, isn't that up to parents anyway? Isn't it okay, or can children grow up to be not racist and also see depictions that probably wouldn't fly today? So let me know what you think in the comments below. I try to be very even-handed about this. I would love to know. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. If there's any points that I missed, don't forget, check out Coffee Table Comics. Help your boy Jason Brubaker out. Even this Sithra box set, I'll tell you, $150. These are so good. I have this whole box set. Excellent books. So check that out. Help him out, and I will see you in the next video.